learning. She's Dr. Amita Govinda, and she's in early learning, and her thinking in early learning and early education and creativity for children in early learning, I think, has influenced Govinda in a big way in doing the kind of things that he's doing. So thank you for being with us. We have Raja Choudhury with us. Raja is this person who's straddling many worlds between New York and Delhi, and between the corporate world and the world of non-profits, between the creative world and the very business world, which is also creative. So he's straddling a lot of worlds, and he's going to be bringing his wisdom to the table. Foundation, and then with the EFIT and with the British, for quite a bit with the British, and now you're on your own and you're doing some work. Yeah. So, Shadi has been all over the world looking at education from a donor point of view and from education from that point of view. It's a very different point of view from the world in which, as teachers you're all in at. But I think he brings to it the kind of special perspective which sometimes we don't get when we are in this other side of the, field. So thank you, Shadi, for being with us. And I will hand the mics over to you to talk. We are talking now about what are the black holes in primary education. Because we all have been discussing issues around education. We've said, there are many issues. Most of you have mentioned what's happening in the CBSE curriculum. You mentioned what's happening in the classrooms. You mentioned what are the issues and challenges in teacher education that's happening in our country. I think that they will be addressing many of these issues which are actually like black holes. We really do not even know what's happening inside it, so we are not able to address these issues. And we hope to have a lot of good ideas. So, Shadi, would you like to start?
Yes.
Yes.
I would like to listen to them. My ideas are very routine, actually.
and then you will sum up everything.
You want me to?
Yes, absolutely. We want to hear from you.
Thank you so much. It's so heartening to see Katha bringing so many, illuminaries like Professor Govinda. Tomorrow, Mr. Joshi and others are going to be here. The entire Katha Utsav is something that is phenomenal. And more so, I think the audience, even at the late hour on a Sunday, you're all here. So it's such a delight to address an audience of this kind. Geeta ji mentioned about the black holes in primary education. Unfortunately, this session is going to focus on the negatives or the pitfalls in primary education to some extent. But I'm sure that while summarizing and concluding, Professor Govinda would have a lot of answers to some of the symptomatic problems that we seem to see in the arena of primary education. I'm going to talk more from a rural perspective, from the perspective of primary schools that I have visited in the recent months across the country. Not in every state, but I've traveled to about 7 states in India in the last year to especially look at the status of teacher education and students, and how they are in a position to access knowledge from a variety of sources. That has been a kind of a study that I did for the Open University in the UK, and I want to share some of my observations to this audience. While doing so, I also want to mention a couple of examples from places like Uzbekistan, Kyrgyzstan. These are all places, we have heard a lot about the Soviet Union, but after the Cold War that ended, we see a lot of progress in this central independent states in the Eastern Asian part. So I want to elicit 1 or 2 examples from some of these countries to basically wind up my talk, and I will be very brief. First of all, I want to start with a very positive note. I think in the recent years, all governments in Asia, particularly governments like India and Sri Lanka, to a large extent, even the Southeast Asian governments have done quite a great deal in enrolling students at the primary level of education, thanks to the non-governmental organizations that have put a lot of pressure on the government systems. Today we see almost 90% enrollment, and in this package of encouraging children to come to school, we also see a lot of other elements, nutritive elements like the midday meal scheme, uniforms, a lot of incentives offered to our children, mainly to encourage parents to release them from making them extra pair of hands of earning. So there is a major shift from children from very poor communities are now attending schools, which is a very, very encouraging sign. That said, even countries like Pakistan, Bangladesh, Indonesia, they are lagging behind. I think it's some good news for India with all this humongous population, a huge multicultural context in which we live. Still, we have achieved quite a great deal, thanks to both government and non-governmental efforts in recent years. But that said, I think in the last few years, the focus is shifting from what they call access to quality of education. That's where I think the black holes start to appear. We are able to see some black holes in the form of what they call, when you start measuring the quality of education rendered to our children, particularly in deprived conditions and in remote locales. We have seen a lot of reports put out by Pratham. The ASER report is quite handy for the policymakers to look at. PISA, the International Study Assessment Study, which unfortunately rates India at a very lower end. In 2011, we were 64th out of the 65 countries the World Bank had looked at. So when it comes to quality education, we seem to be suffering a lot. It may not be the situation in Delhi. Most of the government schools in Delhi are quite equipped, well catering to the needs of the students. They are able to partner with organizations like Katha and others in terms of delivering quality education. But if you go to places like West Bengal, even remotest parts in Madhya Pradesh, one of the very standing examples of good primary education enrollment, you still see a lot of difficulties. Although UNICEF and others have introduced what we call the activity-based learning, and the government state departments have given a lot of support, yet we tend to find this black hole in primary education at the remotest and rural areas. The second black hole, moving from the kind of overall quality, if I go deeper, maybe a subset of this black hole is all about reading. Unfortunately, our children are not able to read. A child of grade 6 is able to only read texts that is meant for grade 1 or 2. So we seem to have this huge issue, although there is no, the policy to promote children automatically for higher grades, to keep them up with the climbing the ladder. We seem to be missing a major area of providing reading habits to our children. And again, I think if you look at the ASER assessment, you would figure out that children are able to, if they are able to read a paragraph, it's a big deal. Even a 7th standard child in some of these villages, he or she is not able to read a paragraph. What to talk about comprehending the paragraph and even writing a paragraph on his own or her own. So this stems from the fact that although the government has a policy to basically provide reading material beyond textbooks to children, I think we have miserably failed. We've also not taken advantage of the information communication technologies and the cognitive opportunities to shift the paradigm that is brought about, which is where the examples from Kyrgyzstan and Uzbekistan are very, very interesting. Vietnam are very, very interesting to look at. We have not taken advantage of both the printed reading material, making this available to children, and also the alternatives in terms of what you find in the ICT-based joyful techniques that are applied in school education. Finally, I want to, before closing my brief talk, I want to also mention that when it comes to the quality of teachers, unfortunately, with regard to catering to the huge number of enrollments that have happened in recent past, we seem to employ a lot of para-teachers who are not qualified, who do not have the skills to actually deal with multi-grade, multi-age groups that they deal with in a school situation. While it is a fact, and there are many research experiences suggest that multi-age groups do tend to enable children to learn much faster and quicker, because they tend to learn from not only from their peers and the same age group, also from their older kids within the group. Unfortunately, we have not been able to make any strides even in those conditions. So I want to perhaps stop here in terms of mentioning that reading material, use of ICTs in primary education, and equipping teachers with equality training in teaching pedagogies. We seem to be failing in this country, and this is true for almost 70% of the rural schools across the country, which is a very dangerous scenario, because unfortunately we may be creating, with the good intention of enrolling students into classrooms, which is a great thing. It's a good MDG statistic. We are in a position to respond to the global community, saying that we are indeed responding to the one of the MDG targets, which is bringing children into the schools. But in doing so, we seem to be creating a huge gap between children who perform well and children who are not able to perform well, and children who actually grow with limited capacity to comprehend knowledge, access knowledge, the chances of their ability to contribute to what you call the inclusive economy in this country, to graduate from the primary education system to the secondary system, and then to either higher education or technical or vocational education is hampered. The two examples I wanted to mention from Uzbekistan, where in a large scale, with the help of the Asian Development Bank, the government has been able to deploy information communication technologies at the primary education level, mainly to help the primary teachers to use technology in classrooms, but also enable children to take advantage of content that's available in multimedia formats that relate with them, that talk to them directly. And I hope when we hear Raja Choudhury in a short while, he would be able to throw some ideas on how e-content can be helpful at the primary level. When it comes to Vietnam and Kyrgyzstan, the examples are very, very stunning. You find not only use of information communication technologies for basic digital literacy, but children are able to produce their own content even at the 4th grade level, which is very, very encouraging. I thought I would stop here, Professor.
And I want to talk, and I'm also working with a group called Livewire, which is about activating young people creativity and the ability to think outside the box. So what I want to talk about today, in my little part, is radical interventions. I think that we are, at once upon a time, you could imagine that kindergarten was a radical intervention. It did not exist. Children were not treated as human beings almost. And if the Germans had not developed kindergarten or the Montessori system, these were all done by people who knew Mother Meera, and they were very involved with India. They were all spiritual people who had come to India, had spent time in Pondicherry. And, Mother also was a radical interventionist, the way she reinvented the whole educational system in Pondicherry first, and then Birambika followed. And I think that we forget that there have been radical interventions throughout history that have taken us further and further along in this great journey that we're on. And the one I want to talk about today is this area of it's very worrying and confusing, but the digital world we're living in, because the statistics are amazing right now that 500 million Indians will have access to rich mobile technology within the next 10 years. Right? That means that every child in India will at least have somebody near them, whether it's a parent or an elder brother or a teacher, who will be able to give them access to mobile technology, rich media, with 3G or 4G or further access. Now that's going to radically revolutionize the way, and we're working at T-Gulf with Khan Academy in America. I'm sure all of you have heard of Khan Academy. And Khan Academy is slowly revolutionizing education in American schools by offering higher level of teacher examples of how to relay a content idea to children, but letting the teacher then become a coach or a guide, rather than a knowledge font for everything that's there. So I'm going to talk about a few things today. One is that we're moving to a revolution in creativity, in content, how content will be distributed, and how content can be shared. Organizations like Khan Academy, TED are coming into India also. And we are seeing Indian organizations like T-Gulf and hopefully Katha in the coming year. We will get you all involved to using this new technology to deliver great teaching. Now whether it is through video or text or whatever you want to call it, on the mobile or on the pad or on the Akash tablet or whatever it's going to come on, it will come. It won't come to every school tomorrow, but within 20 years we won't even remember this conversation, that there was a time when reading was an issue. We won't even remember that time. So the issue now becomes that if we look at the black holes, we can start with the negative and move towards the positive. The black holes are that we are not fostering creativity in our young children, so that we are not getting lifelong learners. So that means that we need to engage with them in such a way that creativity is not taught, but is coached in an early stage of childhood. That's something we have to do. Second is we have not got good access to content, right? So I saw the list that The Hound of the Baskervilles is the one officially accepted copyright book available, right? But that's going to change with the digital technology. Teachers will be able to select what text to choose based on recommended lists and reading. You'll be able to extract content. You'll be able to share content. Video will also play a major part in that. So content is going to have to be revolutionized as well, right? The third part is that the biggest weakness we see in children, because I'm working on leadership with children at the moment with T-Gulf, is we're missing collaborative skills. That the children, I love that story, by the way, in Baroda. I think that's a great story about the children coming together to look after one child. I think that our teachers are not empowered with EQ skills, with skills of emotional connection, emotional compassion, mindfulness. And when I talk about mindfulness, I'm talking about not deep Buddhist meditation. I'm talking about simple tools of training your mind to avoid stress, to focus better, to be a better human being. And how can teachers first be trained in that and then move on to the children as well, right? And the fourth part, which is underlying all this, is the computer revolution. So as you can see, it's all C's. The 4 C's of my life. I'm a Choudhury as well, so 5 C's. So the computer revolution is not anymore the ground of the IITs anymore. It's not. It is accessible to every man and every woman, every child, right? That means that the app that you thought was so complicated can now be produced for under $1 lakh and and be distributed to hundreds of thousands of children, free. Right? Now, when was that possible before? That was not possible before. Forget that what others are going to give you. You as teachers will soon be making your own apps. You will be doing content courses. TED-Ed, for example, the American organization, is launching a tool that you can take any video from YouTube, make your course around it, and deliver it to your students yourself. Right? Free. Completely free. Right? Now, just imagine you have your pad or your phone, and you sit with your children, and you do a course instantly from a TED-Ed video you saw, or a Hindi video, or a whatever, Telugu video, it doesn't matter. And you put a course around that, so everybody puts their notes and they share it and they talk about it. And you can assess, do peer assessment, do group assessment. These technologies are now coming, and you're all going to hear about this in the future. It's called a MOOC. M-O-O-C. I don't know how many of you have heard of MOOC. Anybody heard of a MOOC? You have? You have.
Massive online.
Good. It's a massive online learning platform. Open platform, open course software. Sorry, I didn't use the exact words, I was talking about the platform. A MOOC is basically the name given. Yes, exactly. Is that soon we will be able to provide course structures. Google is, by the way, launching in March a platform, in India as well, in multiple languages, where you can construct a course on your own. And you can put together video, text, and then deliver it to a small group of people in a Google type space, or a group of people, so that you yourself can create a course, can share it with 20 people, or broadcast it live to thousands of people. Right? Now already great examples are being done in America and elsewhere in England, where you're seeing these massive online courses coming, like Coursera, which is integrating courses from universities all over America. There are so many others coming now. And in the next few years, we're going to see Indian school universities offering it. Already they're starting. Amity is offering, others are starting to offer it. And you're going to start seeing massive online courses for teacher education. So for the first time, a teacher at a B.Ed course, who was talking about the B.Ed thing earlier, right? That nobody even goes to the classes, because who's going to go and learn from a teacher who doesn't even know what they're talking about, right? But for the first time, you're going to be able to go and get a lecture from a top-notch teacher, then discuss it in a group, and mentor and monitor yourselves and try and learn from it.
It was all given knowledge, not to be discovered, not to be constructed, as national curriculum framework says. But I think reading nevertheless remains a very crucial and fundamental part, even if you talk of construction of knowledge, not just acquiring given knowledge, like the religious knowledge. I think that is at the first point that I want to make, why reading needs to be looked at as a very fundamental requirement in this. I would also like to say, if you go back 500, 600 years ago, you didn't have print material of this kind. There was no printing machine 600 years, 700 years ago, if you go back in the history. But today you cannot imagine a world, I don't know whether we can ever imagine a world where there is no printed word of this kind. Can you imagine a day without a newspaper? Can you imagine a day without a book? Can you imagine a life without a book? It's very interesting, you know, the kind of transformation in civilization that has gone on during the last 600, 700 years after the printing technology developed, the way it has changed. And that has also transformed. I think, you know, that also set the tone for actually group-based learning, where books can be used, everybody can be taught at the same time. This is what the Industrial Revolution brought to us. And and in fact, this is a very interesting thing. If you go to many rural classrooms, you will find that children, generally, teacher reads something and children all repeat. This is something very interesting. I was asking a teacher, why do you do this? No, this is, why did you get this habit that children have to repeat what you read? He said that, I do not know why it has become like this. He was a very conscientious teacher. Probably because earlier only the teacher had the book. Children did not have the books. I don't know. This is what he said. Probably that is the reason. They didn't have the books and only teacher had the book. This is also another, in one of the studies that we are doing, just as recently as 90s, the teacher was actually reading from the book. I said, why don't make a child read and let others listen to? I asked him that, why is it so? Why are you doing that? Why can't you really ask them to read and then really discuss what is written there and then really so that they understand and learn? He said, but all of them don't have the books. There are only few books that are available. I think it's a very important thing when we talk about reading and all, what is the real conditions in which many schools function. Today it's much better. As Chandra said that, it's much better. Today you would find that almost all children would have books. Although many villages when you go, you would find the only print material that you still have is the torn textbook in the classroom that you use. Beyond that, there is no print word at all. But that doesn't have to stop people from thinking that reading is the most important. They all consider, therefore, textbook is very important. But that also brings me to two other things. Teachers complain, "Oh, बच्चे को तो पढ़ने में कोई रस नहीं है, वो तो पढ़ना नहीं चाहता है, बुक्स में हाथ नहीं लगाना चाहता है." I always feel actually, is it true? Why do children really develop aversion to books and reading? And is it real? Is it because of novelty they don't really acquire? I can understand. For instance, when you find that in a village where print material is so scarce to come across, children not really taking on to reading looks quite not unusual after all. But in a setting in urban areas where many of our schools are located, where print material is plenty around, children not taking to reading and developing an aversion to reading, I think we need to ask ourselves, why did it happen? And we all know reading is something that has to develop in early years. And it is not something that you acquire later on. It is in any language where you enjoy reading. It's actually something that you have acquired in early years. That's why, we internationally it is early grade reading is emphasized so much in fact. Early grade reading is the most important thing to happen if you want learning, if you are looking at. Learning is not likely to happen if you don't develop early grading. So aversion probably also develops in the early grades only. Now, this is something that as teachers we all have to really look at. Why does it happen? Two things that studies already mastered the language. We don't have to really teach them. Because they know even by 5 years, 6 years, even the complex structures, as Chomsky would say, will have mastered. They may not know actually, but they would have mastered. So why should they not really read if it is so? Read orthography, the print word. Print word is a mystery. But that mystery is something that children want to explore. What is that behind those black ink is something they always look for. But why would they run away from reading? One reason people have found very often is that you don't really allow them to enjoy reading. You really, which is natural curiosity in a world with lot of print material around them. But you start really telling them to write. We think that you will start reading if you are also able to write. This has been found in elsewhere also that we should not do. Reading should be developed. Mastery in reading is a very important prerequisite if writing has to go faster. This is one. Maybe at a later stage writing also begins. I know everybody doesn't do, but very often this happens. This is forced on children. Second, partly because it is easy to check children. I will come to that later on. Why we do it is that it is easy to know whether you know or not if it is written. But listening to and then reading is you have to establish a relationship with the child, understand the child, listen to the child, which is a more cumbersome job. So we try to escape probably. Second is actually reading. When you make children read, what kind of reading they like most? You make them read textbooks. Textbooks is the worst that you can make them read, to learn. They like reading what Katha produces. They like reading which makes meaning. I remember my mother telling me when I was small that I said that, I'm reading this but I don't understand some of the words. She told me, doesn't understand. Do you understand the meaning that is coming out of it? Some words, if you don't know, don't bother. You will learn it. I think it's a very important, I still remember that. I used to read more because of that encouragement that was there. It's very important. What matters for a child is only meaning, the overall meaning, not the grammatical word, whether it is right or wrong, whether you got the particular meaning of a particular word, it hardly matters. Because our mind, psychology tells us there is something called stimulus generalization, which is actually we round off. For instance, if I draw a circular figure and it's not circle, because if you cut off one portion, still you see a circle of the people. You don't need anything. It in an instinctive fashion, children can acquire learning language. So reading and meaning. This word my going to my mother, this word I didn't understand. Can you tell me what is this word? That is a different thing altogether. So in my view, our techniques of teaching, not the pedagogic techniques, there are reading and all, there are so many methods of reading, the books are there, books on reading is there, how to teach reading is there. I'm not talking about in a simple way, in a simplistic way I would say, because I am not a specialist in language studies, but this is what studies tell us, that these two things are the ones which actually keep children away from books. Particularly even though books are all around them, some children stay away, but not everyone. Why it is so? Because in the natural setting, they would like to read. No one would like to run away from reading. Because that is part of our culture, that's part of our natural environment today. May not be 600 years ago, but today it's part of our natural environment. Except in those village schools, which I have seen, where only the torn textbooks are there. Second, I want to say, why do teachers, why do parents, not just teachers, parents sometimes, more important, they push children to really write instead of allowing them to enjoy reading? Answer is actually CBSE. Sorry, in a figurative sense I am saying. In the sense that, because we look at a child in the caste of a 12th standard student only. For us actually a 6-year-old child, a grade 1 child is also a 12th standard child. It's only a preparation to 12th grade examination. You're not first standard doesn't exist, really speaking. Even when you come to nursery, why do you want to put a child into DPS, not to anywhere? No, in the 12th standard, results are very good there. Yeah. After 15 years you are not bothered. Now, I think this is a very important thing, I tell you. I know, that's why I've said that I'm curious but also happy that CBSE is co-organizing this on reading. Because they're not bothered. It's our 12th standard examination. Our phobia and mania about this that we have developed in this country. I think that has destroyed whole of the education system. Reading is not relevant because you have only to write. So you want to write even when your parents ask you that if you are not teaching, oh, you are in higher KG. In that school, even in higher KG, actually children can write. Why in your school you are not teaching? I would say don't teach even in the first grade probably. Let them read. Some children may start writing only when they are 7.5 years old. Nothing wrong with that. Because some children also start speaking little late. Have you ever allowed any allowance for that? That if the child has started speaking late, we all know that some children speak much earlier, some children, the range could be almost 12 months to 15 months in terms of when they begin and then how they develop speaking. But speaking is very closely linked to all other aspects of language. And therefore, since language is the medium through which they have to go to the school and learn, they imprint on everything. But we are in a hurry to make them write. This is one, I think, we need to really, this examination has really worked backwards. It has a backwash effect, killing the child, and you are talking of creativity. Where is the bothers about creativity? If a child wants to be creative, you should give freedom. You should give freedom. Without freedom, there can be no creativity. If at all there is one thing that underlies all creativity is that there are people who don't, that's why they are considered sometimes, they are little off track. Because, for us the track is so narrow. And a child even goes a little bit away, said, no, don't go there, come here. Right? We want to kill the child, the most important period. And I don't think language development can happen. We may learn the skill of writing and reading, but that is not language development. The love for reading and language development are very closely linked. Why our teachers, I'm not talking here about children, I keep going to all over the country, so many schools I keep going, I keep asking people, teachers, questions, and I ask sometimes head teachers, tell me about your school. After 1 minute maximum, many of them half a minute, they can't speak much. If you ask them to write, I won't say all of you are exceptions. I ask teachers to write half a page limit. Maybe if they write more, you don't feel like reading because there are too many mistakes in it. This is what we have done to language development in this country. You were talking about teachers and teacher quality and why it is not. I think this has become, they are actually products of a world which was not good already. Products of today's teachers are already products of a school system which was like this. And I don't blame, therefore. I don't blame. If teachers are not so articulate, teachers are not able to write well, because if they cannot write well, they cannot teach well, in my view. If you cannot write, you cannot teach well. You have to be able to communicate well, you have to be able to write well, then only you can be a good teacher. But I don't put the blame completely on the teacher. Teacher, yes, very important. But because they are the product of a system which all looked at today's teachers, young teachers, are product of a system where the parents and teachers are only bothered about 12th standard examination. And probably they missed doing very well, therefore they are spared from going to engineering and medicine, and therefore they came to something else and finally came to education and became teachers. Many of them, I am not saying everybody. As I said, this gathering is actually an exception for that. I am not saying that. No, my point is that the reality is this. So learning and reading, which has to happen in the early stages where teachers are very critical, and we have not really given the teachers that value. Now my point is that after they become, okay, as I said, they have already been punished in their childhood, but not allowing to read well to the teachers. After they become teachers, what do we do to them? We punish them again. By doing the same thing, the punishment that they were given, you said that you do the same punishment to your children. How do you really expect development to happen in this fashion? We need to change this. Now, there is one more thing, why reading doesn't happen. Prescription of textbooks is another bane of this country. Interestingly, National Curriculum Framework talked of constructivism, but you prescribe a textbook for grade 1. For grade 1, how can you have a textbook? Why should you have a textbook? How can you have a textbook for grade 1? And this is the worst that can happen. We may say that there is no reading material. Yeah, reading material you should have for grade 1. Maybe Katha's material should be exported to all those places. My point is that how can you really teach creativity, love for reading, if you prescribe a book in which alphabets have to be learned first. And that is the first lesson. Afterwards there will be words that will be there. There will be a limit for the vocabulary that should be there. You should master these many vocabulary or not. These days are gone. I think we need to really look at differently. And we have not really, the dearth of print material, reading material for children is telling in this country. We are actually, we are fortunate or unfortunate, I do not know. We have so many languages in this country, not just English. English is a very small number who read English. But we have more English books than in the local language books. For children, I am talking about. If you today count the number of books that are available in English for small children, I think that may be more than in any other language that you take, in fact. These are most unfortunate things that they have done. There have been said is about technology. What Rather Choudhury has told us, I will put it differently. As school teachers, we are all threatened today. Because we all grew up in a culture. As I said, it took 600 years, only 600 years ago we got the print word. And that print word entering into everyone's family is still going on. It has not entered everyone's life, really speaking. That's what is happening. But computer came only, computer of the kind that we are talking, computer came little earlier, computer of the kind that we are talking, in 10 years, 15 years, internet came only. I remember in 1995 when I started using in my institution, nobody was having any email. When I started having some RG, RPG or somebody had started network, which was, that is the only email that was available. Afterwards MTNL started that. And that was the ASCII format, they used to print. I remember, in 15 years, the kind of change that has come. Now, what he is telling to us is that this evolution is not like the print evolution. This is threatening the monopoly of the schools and colleges as the purveyors of knowledge. We all grew up thinking that if you don't go to school or college, you cannot learn. But today, there is a world that is happening around us. I know our children. I ask some senior students, many times I engage with the children and then ask them, what do you get out of the school? What do you think of the school? It's that, how much do you learn as you go ahead? They do feel that as we go to higher classes and all, we learn, we have to appear for examination. That's what we have to prepare. We know, of course, in the CBSE has done away with the 10th standard. Therefore, many children are scared. Otherwise, in 10th standard also, no teaching is to happen. Now, we know in all your schools also, 12th standard, no teaching happens. Because they go to tuition class. Only examination that happens in that. No, but does it mean that they don't learn? All of them are seeing, at least in the urban area, they are learning outside. In a way, this is actually, now, I know what I want to do. I'm 16-year-old, but I don't want to do all this. Why I want to do this for me? Why do you say that? Yeah, historically it was not possible. Because the knowledge transfer process was limited in a particular track. But today those tracks are opened up. That's what Raja Choudhury. There is no more that. But I just want to rationalize two things. Number one, the human civilization, human history tells me that so many technologies that came, they entered commercial space, they entered our own life space, but they failed to really change schools and colleges. This was said when radio came, this was said when TV came, this was said when so many things came. But it didn't happen. Of course, people always tell me, which I also believe, I want to believe, that this revolution is not like those revolutions. Because I remember in 1970s, in fact, we had something called SITE experiment in India. Satellite instructional television program. That is what we had. But we did nothing, finally. Radio, when I was a student in the school, we used to have a radio period. In radio, they used to really broadcast something because there was no TV at that time. But they did not touch anything to schools, have not changed. It's not me, actually. There was a few years ago, there was a report in US. IBM, somebody had in the IBM was the vice chair and somebody from another university, Pittsburgh University was another chair. And they wrote a report saying the same thing, that we hope that it will change. It's about 8 years ago it was written. That schools and colleges are really very resistant. They don't really allow technology to enter. I can tell you, schools have allowed much more technology. Our colleges close the door for any technology. And how will that really percolate? These are all very easily said. We are part of a small group. We are still a very, very small group who really don't feel threatened with technology. But most people in higher education do not want to use the technology. Either they feel threatened or they feel snobbish. They consider prudish. They don't think this is the right thing to do. This is a very important thing, technology, but it is all part of, we don't teach microchips, but our children are holding microchips in their hand when they sit in front of the TV. But we don't teach them microchips in the school. So this is a very strange world. In India, actually, particularly in India, since he brought in this issue about the rural areas and all those things, we believe in a multi-speed traffic like Delhi traffic. So there are schools, 45% of the schools don't have any electricity. Forget about technology for them, any kind of technology. Because even at least you have to charge. even if you want to use mobile technology. There is no such thing in those places. But we also have schools which are all smart classrooms. They are, everything is there, comparable only to Korea. In fact, perhaps the best schools that I have seen with modern technology equipped is in Korea. In fact, South Korea, some of the best classrooms. In fact, everything you want to teach about leaves, the structure of leaves, the kind of thing that they have and all, fantastic in the classroom, which we don't have. I have not seen in any other countries. So whether we are talking about smart classrooms at the one end, and we also have schools without electricity. But I think we have to live with this. This doesn't mean that we don't have to. As teachers, the challenge is therefore for teachers and parents that we need to move forward. Thank you. I'm sorry. I'm sorry I took a little longer.
I think this is the wisdom we wanted to finish with. So I'm giving all three of you a big hug from me. A very, very big hug. I'm sure you're feeling it. Because I think that finally what teachers want is this kind of guidance. We've gone from rural schools where there's no electricity to high-tech and looking at a world which is going to be in the future for our children, which the children are already living. And if we can travel these worlds and we can go from rural to urban and we can take this innovation into our rural schools, can you imagine what our world will be like? I don't know. We can all dream together. So I wish you all great dreaming. I think after this, I'm not even going to ask you for any questions. It's 5 o'clock. If anybody wants to stay and ask questions,
Geeta, as Katha, why don't you influence the new Aam Aadmi Party to really change our classrooms in Delhi? In Delhi, I'm not asking rural.
Maybe they go all over the world and all over India. They'll change things. But as of now, any questions?
And because of the integrated way of learning, it's actually, our teachers are lifelong learners. Because every quarter a new theme comes, she has to develop her content on that. She has no book to fall back upon, so she's using every different technique that is available to her through her creativity and uses it in the classroom. So that's, I want to tell, because he's spoken and you're practicing it. So I just want you to take that thought that yes, this is possible. Classrooms are creative without the textbooks.
Thank you. Any questions?